The call came through at 7:03 on a Wednesday morning. A body had been found in Lincoln Park, Chicago's crown jewel of green space, where millionaires jogged past homeless people and everyone pretended not to notice. Detective Iris Vaughn arrived as the sun broke through the skyline, painting everything gold except the man slumped on the bench overlooking the pond. He looked like he'd fallen asleep watching the sunrise. Expensive suit, Rolex on his wrist, leather shoes that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Everything about him screamed success, except for the fact that he was dead. Damien Cross, the responding officer said, reading from the wallet they'd found. 36 years old, address in Gold Coast, CEO of Meridian Analytics, that big data company that went public last year. Iris studied Damien's face. Even in death he looked composed, peaceful, almost like he'd finally stopped running from something. The medical examiner crouched beside the body, checking pupils, skin temperature, the usual choreography of death. No obvious trauma, no signs of struggle. But look at this. He lifted Damien's right sleeve. Injection site. Fresh. Upper arm. Toxicology will take a few days, but I'd bet my pension on pharmaceutical overdose. Something fatiguing. This wasn't an accident. Iris looked around the park. Early morning joggers were being held back by police tape, phones out, already posting about the dead man on the bench. Security cameras, 2 on the path, were pulling footage now. This detail matters later. Remember where we started. A man with everything, dead in a park, with no apparent reason to be there. By noon, Iris had built the profile. Damien Cross wasn't just successful, he was a case study in the American dream on steroids. Orphaned at 12, foster care, worked 3 jobs to put himself through Northwestern, built Meridian Analytics from a dorm room project into a $150 million company in 8 years. Magazine covers, TED Talks, Forbes, 30 under 30, he had everything. The question wasn't who killed him. It was why someone with everything would end up dead on a park bench. Iris started with the obvious suspects. When someone powerful dies suddenly, you look at the people closest to them, the ones who stood to gain, who'd been hurt, who'd been left behind in the climb to the top. Suspect 1, Vanessa Cross, the ex-wife, 20-9, former model. They'd married 3 years ago in a ceremony that made the society pages, divorced 14 months later in a legal battle that made the tabloids. Iris found Vanessa in a Streeterville apartment with lake views and barely concealed bitterness. Damien was married to his company, Vanessa said, pouring herself wine even though it was 2 in the afternoon. I was just the accessory that made him look stable for investors. When I asked for more time, more attention, more of an actual marriage, he handed me divorce papers and a check. How much? $2 million. Sounds generous until you realize he was worth $70 million at the time. Illinois is a no-fault state. I was entitled to half of what we built together. His lawyers convinced a judge I'd contributed nothing. So you hated him. Vanessa's smile was sharp. I hated what he became. The man I married still believed in something beyond profit margins. The man I divorced had replaced his heart with a stock ticker. Where were you Tuesday night? Dinner with friends at RPM Italian. Left around 11. Home by 11:30, my doorman can confirm. Motive: revenge and money. If Damien hadn't updated his estate plan, which according to his lawyer he hadn't, most people assume it's the ex-wife. But here's what they miss. Hatred requires energy. And Vanessa looked exhausted, not angry. Suspect 2, Marcus Wellington, the co-founder, Damien's best friend from college. They'd started Meridian together in 2016, equal partners, equal shares, equal dreams. Until Damien forced him out. Iris met Marcus at a coffee shop in Wicker Park, where he now ran a small consulting firm. That was the definition of what could have been. We built Meridian together, Marcus said, stirring his coffee with the mechanical precision of someone who'd told this story too many times. 50-50 partnership. But when the investors came, they wanted one CEO, one vision, one face for the company. And Damien wanted it to be his face. Damien convinced me to step down and said it was temporary, just for the Series A funding. He said once we were established we'd go back to being partners. Marcus laughed bitterly. That was 6 years ago. Last month, Damien offered to buy me out. $10 million for my shares. Shares that are worth $40 million. He said no. I said I'd see him in court. He said I'd regret it. Marcus had been home alone Tuesday night. No alibi. Clear motive. 40 million reasons to want Damien dead. At least out of the way. Suspect 3, Dr. Elena Buscus, the therapist. 40-2, licensed psychologist. According to Damien's calendar, who'd been seeing her twice a week for the past 4 months, Iris found Dr. Vasquez at her practice in the Loop, all earth tones and carefully cultivated calm. I can't discuss my patients, detective, even dead ones. This is a murder investigation. Dr. Vasquez was quiet for a long moment. Then Damien was struggling. Severe depression masked by hyperfunctionality. He'd achieved everything he thought would make him happy: wealth, status, recognition, and when it didn't fill the void, he didn't know how to process that. Was he suicidal? I can't answer that specifically, but I can tell you that high-achieving individuals often experience profound existential crises when external success doesn't translate to internal peace. Where were you Tuesday night? Home with my husband. We watched a movie, went to bed around 10:30. Dr. Vasquez had access to Damien's mental state, his vulnerabilities, his medications, but therapists are supposed to save people, not kill them, unless saving someone means something different. Suspect for Jordan Cross, the younger brother. 20-8, software engineer, living in a modest apartment in Logan Square, working at a startup that would never become Meridian. Iris found Jordan playing video games in an apartment that smelled like old pizza and broken dreams. Damien was my hero, Jordan said, not looking. Away from the screen. Orphaned together, survived foster care together, promised we'd always look out for each other. Then he became successful and I became ... inconvenient. Inconvenient how? I asked him to invest in my company. Nothing major, 200,000. He could have pulled that out of his checking account. Know what he said? He said I needed to prove myself first. That he'd earned everything he had and I needed to do the same. Jordan paused the game, finally looked at Iris. 200,000 wouldn't have even been a rounding error in his portfolio, but he needed me to know he'd become the kind of person who doesn't help his own brother. Where were you Tuesday night? Here gaming until 3 a.m. My online squad can verify the timestamp's weak alibi, but verifiable, and motive that was more about pride than profit. Suspect 5, Nicole Parr, the chief financial officer. 34, Stanford MBA. Damien had recruited her 2 years ago, promised her equity, a path to leadership, the chance to build something transformative. Iris met Nicole at Meridian's glass tower downtown, where she was already drowning in crisis management. The board is in chaos, Nicole said, pacing behind her desk. Damien didn't have a succession plan. He ran this company like it was still a startup, making decisions unilaterally, bypassing protocols. That must have been frustrating. Frustrating. I found out last week he was negotiating to sell the company without telling the executive team. We would have all been out of jobs. 300 employees, just discarded for his profit margin. How much would he have made, personally? 90 million after taxes. The rest of us would have gotten severance if we were lucky. Where were you Tuesday night? Working here. I left around 9, grabbed dinner at Sweet Green, went home, alone. Nicole had financial expertise and access to Damien's but killing your CEO doesn't stop a sale, it usually accelerates it. Suspect 6, Richard Cross, the father figure, 63, Damien's former foster parent. The man who'd taken in 2 orphan boys and, according to records, treated them like sons for 4 years before they aged out of the system. Iris found Richard at a small house in Bridgeport, where old Chicago still existed beneath the gentrification. I loved those boys, Richard said, sitting in a living room full of photos. Damien and Jordan at various ages, smiling, whole, young, raised them from 12 to 16, tried to teach them that family matters more than money. When's the last time you saw Damien? Richard's face darkened. 3 months ago. I asked him for help. My wife needs surgery, hip replacement. Insurance won't cover it all. 20,000 out of pocket. I asked Damien for a loan and he said he'd built his fortune by making smart investments, and lending money to family was statistically a bad investment. We used that exact word, investment. Like I was a stock he was shorting. Richard had been at a community center Tuesday night, volunteering with at-risk youth. 5 witnesses confirmed it, but sometimes witnesses are wrong about timing, and $20,000 to a man worth 70 million might as well be murder. Iris sat in her office that night, 6 suspects spread across her whiteboard, and felt the familiar frustration of a case that looked solvable but felt wrong. Everyone had motive. Everyone had been hurt by Damien's success, by the person he'd become in pursuit of it. But the security footage told a different story. Tuesday night, 9:47 p.m., Damien Cross enters Lincoln Park alone, walks to the bench, sits down, doesn't check his phone, doesn't look around, just sits there staring at the water. 10:03 p.m. A figure approaches, medium height, wearing dark clothes and a baseball cap, sits down next to Damien. They talk. No apparent conflict. No struggle. 10:11 p.m. The figure stands up, walks away. Damien remains sitting. 10:16 p.m. Damien slumps forward, doesn't move again. Think carefully. What's the one question no one's asking? Iris rewound the footage. Watched again. The figure approached from the south entrance. A blind spot between cameras. Left the same way. Never showed their face. But something about their posture, their movement. Professional. Practiced. Medical. Iris pulled Damien's medical records. Therapist. Dr. Vasquez. Primary care physician. Dr. Chun. Specialist consultations for stress-related symptoms. Dr. Patel. Dr. Morrison. Dr. Reeves. Dr. Reeves. Doctors. Damien had been seeing a lot of doctors. She called each one. Dr. Chun. Treated him for insomnia and hypertension. Concerned about his stress levels, but he refused to slow down. Dr. Patel saw him twice for panic attacks. Prescribed anxiety medication he never filled. Dr. Morrison treated him for chronic fatigue. Recommended he'd take time off. He'd laughed at me. Dr. Reeves. I'm sorry. I don't have any patient by that name. Iris pulled the records again. Dr. Nathan Reeves. Licensed physician, but no practice address listed. No hospital affiliation. No online presence. She ran his medical license. Suspended 3 years ago for ethical violations related to end-of-life care, and there it was. Iris found Dr. Reeves at a studio apartment in Uptown, working at a laptop, consulting on medical cases he couldn't legally treat. Damien Krause, Iris said, standing in his doorway. Dr. Reeves didn't pretend not to know the name. Come in, detective. I've been waiting for you. The apartment was spare, clinical, like someone who'd already let go of attachment to place or comfort. Damien found me 6 weeks ago, Dr. Reeves said, sitting across from Iris with the calm of someone past consequences. He'd researched physicians who'd lost their licenses for helping patients with assisted suicide. He needed someone who understood what? That success doesn't cure suffering. That achievement doesn't fill voids. That sometimes the prison is made of gold. Dr. Reeves looked at Iris with tired eyes. He told me he'd spent 15 years climbing, building, achieving, becoming everything society told him to become. And when he reached the top, he looked around and realized he'd sacrificed everything that made him human to get there. His marriage, his friendships, his brother, his father figure, every relationship that mattered. Dr. Reeves pulled out a folder. He showed me this. Letters he'd written to everyone he'd hurt. Apologizing, explaining, trying to make them understand that he hadn't meant to become the person he became. Iris opened the folder. 7 letters. Handwritten. To Vanessa. I'm sorry I chose ambition over you. You deserved a husband, not a business partner. 2 Marcus. I'm sorry I stole our dream and made it mine. You built Meridian as much as I did. 2 Jordan. I'm sorry I became the kind of person who values money over blood. You're my brother. You always will be. 2 Richard. I'm sorry I forgot that you taught me about family when I had none. $20,000 means nothing. You mean everything. To Nicole. I'm sorry I was going to discard you and 300 others for my own profit. You trusted me to lead. I just wanted to cash out. To Dr. Vasquez. I'm sorry I couldn't be fixed. You tried to save me. Some people are too broken. To whoever finds this. I'm sorry I couldn't find another way. Success became my prison. I built the bars myself. Iris looked up. He hired you to kill him. He hired me to free him. Dr. Reeves leaned back. We met in the park. He wanted somewhere peaceful. Somewhere he could see water and remember what it felt like to just exist without performing. I brought pharmaceutical-grade potassium chloride. Explained what would happen. Cardiac arrest. Painless. Quick. He thanked me. Said after 15 years of fighting to stay on top, he just wanted to rest. And you injected him. He injected himself. I just held the syringe steady. Showed him where. How much pressure. Dr. Reeves' voice cracked. He sat there looking at the water and said, Do you think they'll understand? I said I didn't know. He said, Tell them it wasn't their fault. Tell them the prison was mine. I built it, and I couldn't find the door. The room was silent except for the sound of traffic below. All those people rushing toward the success that had killed Damien Cross. What were his last words? Iris asked quietly. Dr. Reeves looked at her with eyes that had seen too much. He said, I achieved everything and became nothing. Tell him that matters. Dr. Nathan Reeves was arrested for assisted suicide and practicing medicine without a license. He didn't resist, didn't call a lawyer, just asked Iris to make sure Damien's letters reached the people they were written for. The 6 suspects Iris had investigated, all cleared, or innocent of murder, but guilty of being casualties of Damien's climb. Vanessa received her letter and cried for the man she'd married, not the CEO he'd become. Marcus received his and sold his shares. Donated half to a foster care charity in Damien's name. Jordan received his and quit his job. Started volunteering with kids aging out of foster care. Richard received his and paid for his wife's surgery with the $20,000 Damien had left him in a separate account he'd never mentioned. Nicole received hers and restructured Meridian, with profit sharing for all employees. Dr. Vasquez received hers and started a foundation for high-achieving individuals struggling with existential depression. Iris sat in her office a week later, the case file closed, and reread the last letter, one addressed to whoever found the body. I spent 15 years building a prison out of success. Every achievement was another bar. Every milestone was another lock. I told myself that the next level of wealth, the next recognition, the next acquisition would finally make me feel complete. But completion never came. Just exhaustion. Just emptiness. Just the realization that I'd sacrificed every person who loved me to become someone even I didn't recognize. The saddest part. Society will call me successful. They'll write about my net worth and my company valuation and my rise from foster care to Forbes. They'll make me an inspiration. But I'm not. I'm a warning. Success without connection is just expansive loneliness. Achievement without love is just decorated emptiness. Wealth without meaning is just numbers in an account you'll never live. Long enough to spend I had everything. It still wasn't enough, because I'd lost the only things that actually were. Iris closed the letter and opened her notebook. The detective's code. Case 50. We investigate murders, assuming someone wanted the victim dead. But what do you do when the victim wanted themselves dead and hired someone desperate enough to help? Damien Cross built an empire and lost himself in the construction. He achieved everything society told him to want and discovered it was a trap. His 6 suspects were all people he'd hurt, climbing to the top, but none of them killed him. He killed himself slowly, over 15 years, by choosing success over humanity. Dr. Reeves just helped him complete what ambition had started. The real crime wasn't the injection. It was the culture that made Damien believe his worth was measured in dollars and achievements instead of relationships and meaning. When success becomes a prison, how many people are locked inside without realizing it? And how many of them are you? She closed the notebook. Outside, Chicago glittered with ambition. Thousands of people chasing the same success that had killed Damien Cross, building the same prison he couldn't escape. The case was over. But the question remained, if you achieved everything you thought you wanted and it still left you empty, what would you do? When does ambition become a disease? When does success become suffering? And how many of us are building prisons we'll never escape one achievement at a time? Was Damien Cross a victim, or was he just the first one brave enough to admit that winning doesn't always feel like winning?